Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today I'm going to talk about rebuilding from ground zero. A lot of people that are, maybe injured may feel like their life is, not going the way they want. Things may have reset. You might have even, moved to another state or things like that. You feel like you got to start from ground zero. This is a big topic for me because, I've been blessed to graduate, but also at that same time, I'm going through ACL rehab, you know, and I never, I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was gonna be a tough time, but as I got into this time, this arc, you may say, it's a lot tougher than I assumed. I'm a big routine guy. I'm a big consistency guy. Shy SGA. He said my whole life is consistent, and I would like to say, I love that phrase. I love that quote, as I feel like my whole life is consistent in a lot of ways. At least my routine is consistent. What I do day to day is consistent. Sometimes the times may fluctuate, but what I'm doing day to day is always going to remain the same. And when my routine disappeared entirely, I struggled. I struggled for a while, but when your routine disappears, so do you. I felt like my entire identity left. I had to figure out how to get around it, and I wouldn't even say the first few days or weeks I was able to do it. I would say now I've just been able to, start getting back into myself. Granted, I'm able to move a little bit, but my routine still hasn't returned. So figuring out how to create my new normal is what I've been working on. Obviously every day now I have to do some sort of rehab. Every day now, I have to figure out what am I going to do in these next few months as a, college graduate. What job do I want? Am I going to go to grad school? A lot of questions that a lot of people may have to answer is questions that I have to answer myself, and I don't really have those answers. All I can do is pray about it, journal about it, and, just continue to be diligent in what I'm doing. But I have to find my new normal, even when I go to the gym. I would say I didn't stretch. I might have stretched at 2 gym sessions this year, and it might have been the quick little, 1, 2. But other than that, I know when I go to the gym now, like, hey, you gonna do some rehab before or after? Obviously when I do leg days, I'm really stretching, but I'm really stretching. I'm gonna stretch every time now. And that stretching may go into my rehab before my gym work. So now I have to create a new system where my gym sessions are gonna be longer. So I have to create a new system where I have to go at a proper time. You know, so it's just gonna create a new sense of discipline. And through that discipline, it's been removing distractions. Through this time of uncertainty, I've been able to remove distractions, and there's a lot of distractions that I keep. I'm a doom scroller. Well, I'm not a bad one. Like, I deleted TikTok January 19th, if you remember that. But right now, I can't really do anything new. I don't have any new books. I don't like playing the game a lot. Like, I could play a few missions or a few games. If you play Foot Champs, I'm gonna keep my comments to myself. But just gaming in general, I don't play the game every day. Sometimes not even for so many weeks. It's no really good games in my opinion, but a distraction, as you may say, has popped back up. Doom scrolling has. I know I shouldn't do it, but every day I find myself doom scrolling. Especially after I do the things that I know I need to do. I don't have nothing else to do, I would say. And I have to figure out how to be better in that time. And remove that distraction as I continue to get to where I want to be. You know, but that, as I mentioned, it leads to drifting. Drifting to doom scrolling because I am no longer disciplined in my consistency plan. You know, but with the drift, you feel like a failure. I caught myself doom scrolling for like the past 2 days. This happened, especially yesterday. I remember vividly. I was doom scrolling. My head just started pounding. Not even pounding like it hurt, but pounding like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? What are you sitting here laying down doom scrolling for? You can't go do nothing else, and it's just like, really, what can I do? I don't know what to do. I feel lost because I don't have a plan and I can't go do the things I really want to do. It's probably something I could have went and done, but I felt like a failure. I'm gonna keep it honest, but I'm trying to embrace the stillness that God has, put me in. You know, a lot of people say your ACL surgery comes from, maybe not listening to God or not listening to your body. And I would say I was probably doing both. Maybe one more than the other. I feel like I definitely needed a rest during my time, but I'm a person that I'm gonna keep moving. Even when I found out about it and things began crashing down, I was like, who am I to rest because I'm not where I want to be? But I just had to find that balance now. Back to 2 Corinthians, verses 5, chapter 5, verse 17, he says, anyone in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone, the new is here. Also Romans 12:2, like, you have to get rid of the old you, and you have to be able to move on past the old things and grow into this new person. It may be scary. It may hurt losing some things, some friends, maybe even some opportunities, but to get to where you want to be and to get to who you should be, you have to do said things. I understand fully, and it's just, it's a trying time, just in the world in general, it's a trying time, but ultimately you only have yourself. So if you feel like you're rebuilding from ground zero and it's taking forever, or you feel like it's not working, trust it's working. As long as if you only have one thing you feel like you should be doing through the day, whether that's rehab, read a book, maybe cook a meal, go on a walk, whatever that one thing may be, send an email, do that one thing. So if you feel like a failure scrolling later or watching your show or whatever you feel like that may be, allow it. You can't really do much, but you did what you needed to do. Maybe you could send 2 emails, 3 emails. If you're a content creator, post 3 videos. It's a lot of things where if you can do multiple things, do multiple things in one thing, and see where that leads you. Help you build your discipline in that area. But here, this is episode 4 of the mini series, but we have a new thing that I'm adding. The TPM, the paradoxical moment. This is gonna be, my belief, or not the truth. It could be true, but this is, just my belief in things, and I'm always open. It's just an idea, and I'm always open to change. I'm always open to new things. This is how this even started, because I just want to learn so much, as well as get the understanding of a lot of things. So we just go out here and blatantly say it. The moon landing was fake. That's my idea, though. But I'm going to just say the moon landing was fake, bro. It was 1969. First of all. You can't even name one technology that was heavily advanced in 1969 to say we even went to the moon. Granted, okay, I understand China and Russia acknowledged it happened, but still, in 1969, what advancements did we have in technology? We haven't been back since 1972. It's 2026, and I would say our technology is way more advanced, but we haven't been back. Why? We're trying to go to Mars, but we haven't even been back to the moon. First of all. Second, like I said, it was 1969. You want to know some advancements in technology we had? A glue stick. The first in-home gaming system. A computer mouse. Wireless headset. Bubble wrap. Just to name a few. These were the advancements that we had in 1969. So who to say that we really left this atmosphere and went and landed on another planet and then got off that planet with set up cameras, hopscotching, and then left? And two, we on that planet, why not collect as many samples as we could? Dig up some dirt, take some debris, see what we could do back on Earth. But no, we just go hopscotch around, plant a flag, get up out of here. Doesn't make sense to me. 2, the value of just getting there was high. Everybody knows if you do something first, usually you're going to get the recognition. But you really go get the recognition that you deserve. Obviously China and Russia, it was a big thing versus Russia to get there. So if Russia get there before us, it could have been an issue, but the incentive for us to get there was so high that it really didn't matter if it was real or fake. You know what I mean? Like, if it was a green screen or not, they got there, and it's easy to say they got there. And you could say, well, you did say China and Russia acknowledged that it was real, but we know powerful nations, we know they have meetings where some things are going to be classified forever. I'm an advocate for some things should be, for everything should, should be human knowledge. Everybody should know everything, you know. But that's just the power that authority has, you know. And I just look at it like, if it happened or it didn't, if the moon landing happened or it didn't, I'm just saying that sometimes authority has to be questioned, during, especially during the paradoxical moment. But some things have to be questioned, whether, it's always good to question things, art or, things you see on a day to day basis, and especially conspiracy theories, as you might want to say. Like the moon landing, something doesn't sit right with me on believing the moon. And then I'm a big fan of, looking up and seeing the moon, as you would say. Whether that the moon is actually the moon, the world may never know. But hey, thank you for tuning in today, especially on, learning how to rebuild from ground zero. And, if things seem dim, Rome wasn't built in a day. When you plant a flower yesterday, you're not going to go out there today and see a freshly bloomed flower. No, it takes time. Things take time. So, just trust yourself, be patient, do the things that you need to do, water that plant, and get to where you need to be.